This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
As the coronavirus continues to spread around the world, more than 600,000 cases have been reported. In Africa, countries are enforcing strict measures to stop the virus, which has infected close to 4,000 people on the continent. This and much, much more on our coverage of the global pandemic. Hello and welcome to Africa Live. As always, great to have you with us. I'm Richard Nta, live in Nairobi. And for those of you joining us from across the continent and around the globe, we thank you for joining us. Let's take a look at other stories making headlines this hour. The Democratic Republic of Congo reverses a national lockdown following a rise in the prices of basic commodities. And in sports, top Kenyan athletes react to the postponement of the Tokyo Olympics. Once again, welcome to Africa Live. The new coronavirus continues to spread around the globe. Some 665,000 cases have now been confirmed in most countries in the world. The United States has now reported the most infections after a rise of 20,000 on Saturday, bringing the total to 124,000. Italy has reported nearly 900 new deaths, bringing its total to over 10,000, the highest globally. Spain is the second hardest hit in Europe. It saw over 9,000 new cases on Saturday. Fatalities are nearing 6,000. The government has issued a nationwide 14-day stay-at-home order for non-essential workers. Iran has recorded more than 35,000 cases and over 2,500 deaths. The Chinese mainland reported one new domestic transmission in Henan province on Saturday. The patient was found to have had contact with an asymptomatic case. 44 new imported cases were confirmed in 15 regions. 7 cases were in Shanghai and 4 in the capital, Beijing. In Hubei province, where the outbreak began, active cases have dropped to 2,000. Over 90% of patients there have recovered. And in Africa, the rising number of COVID-19 cases is raising concerns. There are now nearly 4,000 cases in 46 countries. Several governments have announced lockdowns and other tough measures to curb the spread of the virus. Authorities in the Democratic Republic of Congo have postponed a 3-week lockdown in Kinshasa following a sharp rise in the prices of basic commodities. The lockdown was meant to start on Saturday. CGTN's Chris Ochamringa has more.
Lian Sumpi sells vegetables at Kitambo Market in the DRC capital, Kinshasa. She showed up for work early after hearing about the postponement of a 3-week lockdown across the city. The government announced the lockdown on Thursday to prevent the spread of the coronavirus. But it was very unpopular.
We are very happy that the government has postponed the shutdown. We thank God that our leaders have listened to our cries.
The governor of Kinshasa said the lockdown was postponed because of a rise in prices of commodities by speculators, but he did not state when it will be imposed again. The news has been welcomed by many.
The postponement of the shutdown has been received well here. It has prevented a bigger crisis. The prices of basic foodstuffs had increased significantly after the government directive was made.
The lockdown was supposed to run for 4 days, with a break of 2 days in between to allow people to buy food and other essentials. This market on the outskirts of Kinshasa is normally crowded with hundreds of shoppers on a weekend like this. But many people have stayed home because the news about the postponement of the lockdown came in late on Friday. Kinshasa has an estimated population of 12 million people. Many of them live from hand to mouth. The shutdown was likely to hit them hard. Early this week, the government announced a state of emergency following a rise in cases of the coronavirus. More than 50 cases have been recorded so far. Domestic flights and water transport to and from Kinshasa have been banned until the disease is contained. Chris Ochamringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
The South African National Defense Force has received a donation of medical protective gear from the People's Republic of China's armed forces. The donation includes 2,000 protective eye goggles and 30,000 face and nose masks. CGTN's Yulisa Njamela has more.
The protective gear was donated during an acceptance ceremony held at the South African Military Health Services Medical Depot in Pretoria. The gear will be utilized by the various members of the South African National Defense Force directly involved in supporting government efforts during the state-proclaimed 21 days lockdown of the country due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The masks and protective eye goggles will be distributed according to prioritized requirement.
Now that we are not operational ready as the South African National Defense Force stroke SAMS, we definitely are operational ready. So this handover is adding on the stock that we already have, and it is highly appreciated because it came at the right moment, the right time. This handover is extremely significant to the South African National Defense Force, especially to the South African Military Health Services, because we're starting to deploy our soldiers, and it is relevant and it is essential that when we send them out there, they've got the necessary protective clothing that is required.
The Brigadier General says these kinds of acts further strengthen the relations between the two countries.
I would like to say that we have been having a relationship, a very strong relationship with the Republic of China, and this has now is going to strengthen, and it shows how committed they are to us. And we in turn hope once we are at their level, we'll be able to do as they have done to us.
It's been over 2 decades now that China and South Africa have enjoyed good relations. Those relations have over that time developed from a partnership to a strategic partnership, and then to a comprehensive strategic partnership. In addition to the protective gear that has been donated by the People's Republic of China Armed Forces, other entities from China that operate here in South Africa have also at least donated 3 million rand towards the fight against this coronavirus. Yulisa Njamela for CGTN in Pretoria, South Africa.
Well, South Africa is in the 3rd day of its 21-day lockdown. 24,000 members of the South African Police Service have been deployed. They are supporting the country's armed forces and local police departments. As part of the lockdown, South Africans must stay home except for essential workers. Trips to buy groceries or seek medical attention are allowed. So far, 55 people have been arrested for violating the lockdown measures. South Africans have praised the government's orders to rapidly have a national shutdown. Many say the government learned a lot from China and thus acted rapidly in order to contain the spread of COVID-19 in the country. South Africa is the most economically developed country in sub-Saharan Africa. After the COVID-19 epidemic broke out in Europe and the United States, frequent and uninterrupted travel made South Africa quickly become the hardest hit area in Africa. In just 3 weeks, the number of COVID-19 cases in South Africa has exceeded 1,000, prompting the government to close the country's borders and isolating all residents at home. Many residents agree this is the only effective measure to curb the spread of the epidemic.
I think, China's got a very good relationship, not only with South Africa, but with Africa as a continent. They're very much involved here from an economic point of view. And I think the lessons that they've learned, they greatly shared with us. And that's partly why we're probably now in lockdown much earlier than other parts of the world, in terms of what we learned from the Chinese model. So I do think that going forward, the Chinese government and the South African government will work together quite a bit in terms of applying those lessons learned from China to make sure that we can also contain the virus.
Rather play it safe than sorry. It's not that we are hoarding on supplies, but rather purchase some stuff before actually the lockdown, so that to avoid how many times we leave the house. And the goal is basically to not only worry about whether we get it from somebody, as much as if we have it, we don't transmit it to others. So the safer we play in terms of putting a mask, gloves, and maybe a suit if you have, plus full-on clothes underneath, the safer your game and the quicker we can get rid of this.
Leaders of the G20 countries have held a video meeting with China's President Xi Jinping. President Xi has emphasized the importance of international community joining hands to help stop the spread of COVID-19. President Xi also says the G20 countries will help countries with weak economies overcome the pandemic. Ethiopian professor Konstantinos Bethafusa said President Xi Jinping's proposal at the G20 meeting was very important, and he believes that in the current pandemic, China should offer leadership and lead the world's economic development. G20 countries make up about 90% of the world economy. Due to this, the countries have a very strong leverage on improving the world's economy.
China has the experience of dealing with this virus, and it has come out clear now. China can contribute a lot into this. When we talk about the G20, today very few countries in the G20 can afford to be able to restructure the world economy. Probably the only country that can do this is China. And therefore it's important that, number one, Chinese manufacturing is restarting, because it will consume a lot of the inputs that it imports from other countries, and it will avail goods and services that China is to deliver. The second thing is Chinese leadership is important because China has the financial power to do this, while other countries don't. The traditional donors that we talk about are very limited by their own problems today. So I think, President, these proposals in terms of reinvigorating global trade, in terms of creating a consensus between countries on how to fight the disease, and also in terms of how China can support other countries to be able to deal with the virus, is an important initiative.
In the United Kingdom, the number of both infected and dead is increasing. CGTN's Nicole Johnston tells us what measures the government is taking.
The number of people who've died from coronavirus in the UK has increased to more than 1,000, with 260 dying in the last 24-hour reporting period. A big increase on the previous day, which was 181. The British government says that the number of people being infected is doubling every 3 to 4 days. But the Imperial College in London has released a new model, and it says that if the UK continues its lockdown and if the virus's trajectory maintains a similar path to that of China, then the number of people who die could be around 5,700. That is a lot less than its previous best-case scenario of 20,000 and worst-case scenario of more than 250,000. This weekend, the British government is increasing its testing capacity, mainly for frontline medical staff, doctors, nurses, and any emergency workers. They've opened up various centres across the UK, as well as a number of drive-through centres. So far, around 6,000 tests are being carried out each day. It wants to increase this to 25,000, so it has a long way to go. But by comparison, Germany is currently carrying out 12 times more testing than the UK.
The United States now has the highest number of infections in the world. Authorities have issued a 14-day travel advisory for the states of New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. President Donald Trump backed away from his earlier idea of a lockdown for New York and tweeted that a quarantine will not be necessary. CGTN's Simon Marks has the details.
The day began with President Trump intimating that he was planning to quarantine the whole of New York, New Jersey, and parts of Connecticut. He said that to reporters as he left the White House this morning, and then he said it again publicly as he made an address in Norfolk, Virginia, from where a hospital ship was about to sail to New York. The president indicating that he planned to seal off hundreds of thousands of square miles of the northeast of the United States from the rest of the country. But within hours, the President of the United States had backed down on Twitter, announcing a short while ago that there will be no quarantine. That is partly because of absolute fury on the part of the governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, who questioned the legality of the move and also indicated that he didn't believe that the people of the United States would, as he put it, stand for it. He said it was going to bring about mayhem and pandemonium if there was any attempt to seal New York State, New Jersey and parts of Connecticut off from the rest of the United States. So President Trump now says that the Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta will simply issue what he calls a strong travel advisory. There is, of course, no such thing as a strong travel advisory, just a travel advisory that has no legally enforceable action here in the United States. The president has also, by going through all of this today, tacitly acknowledged that coronavirus is spreading up and down the eastern seaboard here in the United States and beyond.
And to China now, and Beijing is imposing a strict 14-day quarantine on all arrivals from overseas to help contain the coronavirus in the Chinese capital. Now, many have been reporting psychological problems such as loneliness and anxiety during their time in isolation. However, a group of volunteers are on hand to help them through this difficult period. Yu Yang has this story.
Brian Dorman arrived into the Chinese capital from the United States 9 days ago and has been staying all alone in a designated hotel ever since. One day, he received a piece of flyer.
The other day, I opened my door to pick up my lunch that's delivered every day from a nearby restaurant, and I spotted this little flyer, and it appeared to be from some group offering psychological counseling to people feeling, depressed as a result of being isolated.
Brian found out that a non-profit organization, Sunshine Partner, was working with the Beijing Association of Social Psychology to provide mental health support for people under quarantine. And Brian puts us in touch with the volunteers working at the organization.
We have been providing psychological support for residents, villagers, and medics in Wuhan since the second day of the Chinese New Year holiday until March 5th. Then we came back to Beijing. We found many overseas students and foreigners have come back to the city. Then we started to provide psychological support for them.
We were told about 20 people have contacted with the support group. Some were overseas students, others were just visiting the country. The volunteers said they came across all kinds of anxieties. For instance, one person was worried because he was on the same inbound flight as a confirmed case.
We have several ways to calm their mood. For example, tell them to shift their attention by reading books, newspapers, and we also organized online disco dancing on WeChat. When they were dancing and singing, they could feel a release in pressure at night.
The support group doesn't just help English-speaking people, but they have volunteers who can speak a number of languages. In a report published by the Lancet in this March, noting that there are several ways to address the psychological impact of quarantine. Those include keeping one's social network alive, communicating with friends, family and colleagues, and talking to health officials.
Being isolated isn't much fun, and it can be stressful, and this kind of mutual aid is really great to see.
Trained volunteers using their free time to assist others in their time of need. Sometimes a little bit of care can go a long way. Yu Yang, CGTN, Beijing.
Chinese nationals living abroad are faced with a difficult choice: spend money to come home on one of a limited number of flights or cope with rising infections where they live. Fortunately, there's a new online platform where they can talk with expert doctors on what to do. CGTN's reporter Wu Lei has more.
Hu Xin is a postgraduate student at Newcastle University in England. Across the UK, most people have to stay at home due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Recently, Hu didn't feel very well, but couldn't go out to see doctors, so he turned to a free online medical consultation platform to consult with Chinese doctors.
There are some clinical and treatment differences between Chinese and Western doctors, and to consult Chinese doctors is more convenient for me with no language barriers.
This platform provides overseas Chinese nationals with access to domestic doctors who worked on the front lines battling COVID-19. Dr. Wang Jian joined the platform a few days ago. He uses it not only to answer COVID-19 questions, but also shares his experience with global peers.
Especially how to protect yourself, how to protect your medical staff, and how to share the resources. During the outbreak period, it's very important how to share especially the PPE, we call the personnel protection equipment, these kind of things. So you have to organize efficiently.
The platform Global Medi Exchange for combating COVID-19 was developed by Ali House of Alibaba Group. It aims to facilitate online communication and share anti-epidemic knowledge and practical experience.
So far, over 100,000 Chinese living overseas have consulted on this platform, and almost 1,000 domestic frontline doctors voluntarily joined in.
With confirmed cases still rising in many countries, experts say more online consultations and experience sharing will be happening around the clock. Chinese tech companies and frontline doctors aim to continue their help. At this critical moment, digital consultation seems more efficient and comforting. Many say people can't beat this virus unless we all share resources, experience, and lessons. Wu Lei, CGTN, Hangzhou.
You are watching Africa Live on CGTN. We'll see you on the other side of the break with more news. Here's a look at the headlines. Guinea's opposition rejects constitutional referendum results. Find out why the coronavirus lockdown could lead to more cases of gender violence in South Africa.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
And welcome back. The Guinean opposition has rejected the result of a constitutional referendum, saying it fears it will be used to extend President Alpha Conde's grip on power. The proposal to change the constitution was hugely controversial in the West African state. It has spurred mass demonstrations, resulting to at least 32 deaths. The government, however, argues that the constitution needs to be updated to usher in badly needed social changes, especially for women. Reforms would include banning female genital mutilation and underage marriage and giving spouses equal rights in a divorce. The charter would limit presidential terms to 2, but extend the length of the term to 6 years.
The electoral agenda is like the bills we have to pay to take part in the presidential election, and therefore these elections will also expect us to prepare ourselves, to organize what we can so that at the level of the presidential majority, the victory is also overwhelming.
No one can be happy about what happened in Guinea with these deaths, injuries and violence against peaceful citizens. The results to which you refer are results that do not concern the people of Guinea. These are results that have been engineered by the RPG, the CENI and government. So, they have absolutely nothing to do with the people of Guinea.
Well, to South Africa now, where the government is worried that the cases of abuse and gender-based violence are likely to increase during the 21-day lockdown period placed to curb the spread of the COVID-19. The South African government also says many abuse victims are likely to be afraid to venture out to report such cases during this period. And CGTN's Yulisa and Jamila reports the government has now put up new measures to ensure victims are able to find assistance at this critical time.
Despite efforts by the South African government to address violence against women and children, the scourge continues to escalate. The latest crime statistics show that the femicide rate increased by over 7% between 2016 and 2017. That's 5 times the global average. Sexual offenses and domestic violence are also at staggering levels. Government is now concerned that during the lockdown, domestic abuse cases will increase.
We have not forgotten that there might be a response or negative response to people when they are put in their houses and increase the question of abuse. We have increased our units that deal with the matters of women and children abuse, and we will make a call to say those people can have the number and phone when they are abused.
All departments will work in tandem to ensure that the abuse scourge does not continue.
We, of course, are going to work closely with the Minister of Justice in particular and the police to just make sure that when it comes to issues of violence against women and children, the attention is given, because we did mention that when people are at home and everybody is at home, sometimes the tempers rise. This is not the time for people to really engage in abusing women and children or abusing anybody. This is just not the time for that.
South Africa is dealing with a crisis of gender-based violence and femicide. President Cyril Ramaphosa has admitted that the country is facing a national crisis of violence against women and children. A 2018 report by Statistics South Africa shows that 1 in 5 women has experienced physical violence. Rape and murder rates are also worryingly high, and conviction rates remain low. A bulk of women suffer abuse at the hands of their loved ones. According to a 2019 statistics report, femicide increased by at least 11% in the past 3 years. During this period of the lockdown, government wants to ensure that women and children are insulated from abuse problems. Yulisa and Jamila for CGTN in Pretoria, South Africa.
Following the winter season, the northern regions of Niger have been invaded by swarms of desert locusts, but the people there have started to catch and sell the insects. We visited a market in Niger to see how this seasonal activity has helped generate income for many informal traders in the country. CGTN's Tuli Shabalala has that story.
The markets in Niger have been inundated with desert locusts since the end of the winter season. There are dozens of sellers of this edible insect all over the country, and it's a booming business. In the capital Niamey, the Katako market is one of the best known places to buy and sell the locusts.
Luckily, many people consume it. The price of a bag of locusts varies between $80 and $100. But we also sell in retail, and sometimes it's exported to foreign countries.
Generally, I buy locusts in large quantities. I prefer to come to this market because the prices here are affordable compared to other markets. I like the locust, and when I come here, I buy for the whole family and friends. Today, for example, I bought 13 boxes.
Mardia Omaru has been a locust trader for over 10 years. Every day, tens of kilograms of desert locusts are fried and sold from her home, with the use of chili, garlic, salt, and a few other ingredients. As a mother and a widow, the income made from this business helps her to provide for the needs of her whole family.
It would be a lie if I ever said that this business does not pay. I have 4 children and all go to school. Thanks to the sale of locusts that I managed to educate them. I indeed have another activity, but the sale of locusts is my main source of income. By the grace of God, it pays a lot.
Niger's regions of Maradi, Zinda and Tahawa are where most of the locusts are caught. They use nets, their bare hands or even pesticides. But nutritionists warn against the use of chemicals.
There are many drawbacks to consuming locusts when they are not properly caught. It is very dangerous to use pesticides to catch locusts because pesticides are harmful to human health. They can cause digestive disorders such as diarrhea, vomiting and even allergic reactions. In the long term, the ingestion of pesticides can cause cancer.
The locust trade is becoming a big informal sector in Niger. In 2013, the Food and Agriculture Organization recommended the consumption of edible insects to enhance food security. According to specialists, the dry weight of a locust consists of about 62% of protein. Thuli Shabalala, CGTN.
And we're not done just yet on Africa Live. We've got your business news coming up after the break. Here's a preview of the headlines. Kenya's transport and hospitality industries hit hard by coronavirus restrictions. And Democratic Republic of Congo reverses a national lockdown following a rise in the prices of basic commodities.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Facing a spike in COVID-19 cases, Africa is now struggling to halt the spread of the virus. Kenya is one of the countries which have taken measures such as banning international flights, restricting public transport, and banning large gatherings. These measures have had a great impact, especially on the hospitality sector.
On Wednesday, 25th of March, 2 weeks after it registered its first case of COVID-19, Kenya closed its airspace to all international flights except cargo flights and ghost flights. The empty, deserted international airport in Nairobi was an unfamiliar sight, a far cry from its usual bustle. But this is only one in a raft of measures the government has taken to safeguard its population from the pandemic. Kenya has instituted a dusk to dawn curfew, restricted mass transport and banned large gatherings. The impact of these measures has been immediate, especially to those in the transport sector. Peter Muidhania has worked in the tours and travel industry for years, receiving foreign and domestic tourists and taking them around the country. But all of his foreign guests have now cancelled their trips to the country.
Unfortunately, because of the closure of the airport, it's not even something to think about that I'm going to receive any foreigner. So it's a serious impact because even the kind of bookings that were done long before the corona came in, they have now been cancelled.
With a curfew in place and orders to keep their distance from others, domestic tourists are also shying away from travel. Belsheba Mwanza's trip to the coast with her family was cancelled just 1 week before she was due to travel.
I had hoped that things would settle in. When we started getting this information, I held on to my hope. So there's no cancellation done until yesterday when the hotel called me and told me that they're not taking in any more people coming into their hotel. I also got a call from the flight telling me that I could leave my ticket open for the next 6 months, but that basically means that my trip is cancelled.
Across the country, major hotel chains and smaller establishments have issued notices announcing their closure indefinitely.
The uncertainty is real. It's not like the way we started thinking about it when we were starting, but now it's real. The impact is real, that then tomorrow is completely uncertain about us.
But in the midst of all these changes, entrepreneurs in the transport and travel sector remain hopeful. They have joined the government, amplifying its message, urging members of the public to stay home and help curb the spread of COVID-19 so that things return to normal faster.
I am still willing to travel, and I think within the 6 months, I tell myself that things will get better, and yes, I'll still be willing to go to the particular place that I'd booked.
To this end, Kenya's Ministry of Tourism has set aside $5 million for its post-coronavirus recovery plan, holding on to the belief that when the crisis ends, the scenic sites will bustle with life again. Wilkis Anyabwa, CGTN.
Travelers in many African cities from Nairobi to Johannesburg are now heading to the countryside. There are growing concerns that there is a higher chance of contracting the coronavirus while in the cities because of their populous nature. There is also the counter effect of price hikes as a result of panic buying. South Africa is currently experiencing a lockdown that began on Thursday at midnight, and in Kenya, a 7 p.m. to 5 a.m. curfew began on Friday. In efforts to control imported cases as well as local transmissions, governments have restricted international flights as well as the number of passengers in public buses and minivans. Amidst all these measures, travelers are now seeking solace in the countryside.
I am going back home because of the coronavirus, and the people here are many compared to the countryside. There, you just stay in your compound, where your movements are very limited.
The landlords are hard on us, saying that the government directive was nowhere in their plan.
Judging by the state of the coronavirus at home where I'm going, there's only a smaller number of people who are infected, unlike here at Johannesburg. So yeah, I think there's 80% chances that I can be safe when I'm home.
And to China now, where the Wuhan's transportation system is partially back up and running. 6 metro lines are open again after a 2-month travel ban. Riders are still cautious, but they're also breathing a sigh of relief. Here's Sun Chinyuan.
Wuhan's metro system hits the restart button after 2-month lockdown. Normally, this transit hub for lines 2 and 4 receives 50,000 passengers on a regular day. On the first day back, there weren't nearly that many. But those who showed up say they've missed their daily commutes and the usual faces they see.
I'm going to Xunlimen Station on line 2 to see my fiancée. I haven't seen her in 2 months.
Li's fiancée asked him to stay put until the outbreak was completely over, but he couldn't wait and took the train to see her before going to work.
We're lucky to be safe and healthy. I hope our country can stay strong. Wuhan has made great sacrifices. I feel it too as a new Wuhaner and hope the city may get even better.
Metro workers are also glad to see people other than themselves after an unprecedented 2-month gap in local history.
The metro reopened today, meaning residents' daily lives will return to normal soon. I'm quite glad.
To guarantee safe travels amid the outbreak, the station continues to check passengers' temperatures and still uses big data to track each rider's health status, arrival and departure. Sun Tianyuan, CGTN, Wuhan.
Hubei, the province at the center of China's COVID-19 outbreak, has resumed domestic passenger flights. The plan doesn't include the badly hit city of Wuhan, however, and it also excludes Beijing as well as Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan. Authorities have been gradually lifting travel restrictions in Hubei, with the province registering no new cases of the virus for several days now. Domestic rail services generally resumed in Hubei on Wednesday, again excluding the city of Wuhan. It means many of Hubei's stranded residents can finally go home.
I'm from Wuhan. I hadn't been here for more than 2 months. I'm very happy to come back home.
I live here and I hadn't been back home for 80 days. I really miss my hometown.
Time now for a short break. The news continues on Africa Live. See you soon.
Join us in Global Business and see Africa through our eyes. the greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Nta, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Nigeria has banned social gatherings due to rising cases of the coronavirus in the country, and scheduled wedding ceremonies are among the events most affected by these restrictions. A couple living in the nation's capital, Abuja, were planning to tie the knot and are now in a fix. CGTN's Kelechi Emekalon reports on how the COVID-19 shutdown is affecting their plans.
Weddings in Nigeria are usually extraordinary moments of celebrations and reunions. And for 5 years, Locust and Joseph have dreamt about taking their wedding vows in front of their family, friends and well-wishers. The traditional wedding ceremony had been scheduled for March the 28th, and all plans were going on well. But now their hopes and plans hang in the balance, following the government's restriction on social gatherings due to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Have been on deck. In fact, as I speak, what needs to go to the village had gone to the village. We had bought everything, virtually everything needed. We are set. We are just waiting for the date. So everything about the traditional marriage is set. Like with the trend, we have to respect the laws of the land. It has affected us completely. As I see it, I'm confused. I don't even know where to go. I don't even know if we should suspend the date, if we should cancel the wedding.
I'm not really happy about the situation on ground. I've invited a lot of friends, and now it's have to. The way I'm looking at it now is going to be the situation. Might have affected some of my friends. They won't be able to come for the wedding due to the fact that the virus can easily be contacted, and there is a restriction of a particular amount of people that have to be in a gathering. So I felt the COVID-19 has actually created a very bad situation towards the wedding.
The growing number of confirmed cases in Nigeria has forced authorities to put stringent restrictions in place to contain the spread. The measures include a limit on social gatherings to not more than 50 persons, international travel restrictions, schools shut down in major cities across the nation, and a border closure. With guests invited from different parts of the country, the couple said they cannot control the number that show up for the ceremony. So rescheduling the wedding ceremony is certain.
Inconveniences cannot be quantified in terms of money. What we intend to do, or what I think should be the best solution, is to postpone it. Whether we do this traditional marriage this week or not, we'll still marry her.
That our government sits to do something about it. And any medical personnel who thinks he knows one or two things to get to the root of this, I just hope God touches them, give them wisdom, and they see that we bring out this nation out of this virus.
Despite the increasing number of cases in Nigeria, Locust and Joseph remain optimistic. They hope to overcome these trying times and look forward to spending the rest of their lives together. Kelechi Amekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
Guess what? We've got your sports news coming up after the break. Don't go away. Let's take a peek at the headline. In sports, top Kenyan athletes react to the postponement of the Tokyo Olympics.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back to Sport on Africa Live. Well, the biggest news in the world of sport this week is the postponement of the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games to the summer of 2021 due to the coronavirus pandemic. Top Kenyan athletes have hailed the move, as CGTN's Mohammed Abubakar now reports.
The International Olympic Committee